Hey guys, welcome to this live stream. I know I said I was going to do this in a few hours, but I'm doing this early. So in this tutorial, I'll be showing you what's new in GIMP 2.10.22. So this just came out yesterday officially for Windows on the GIMP main website, and they are referring to it as the file formats release. We're doing this live, so there might be some mistakes. I don't do live very often, so I'm not very good at it. But GIMP 2.10.22 did come out yesterday, and if you were a premium member on my website, I did put out an email notifying users that it was likely that GIMP 2.10.22 was going to be coming out in the next few days. But before we dive into this tutorial, and it looks like we have possibly a low bitrate, so I do apologize if there's any sort of streaming issues on here. I think we're good to go. Before I dive into the actual tutorial, don't forget to check out my website at daviesmediadesign.com. As always, I have tons of GIMP and Inkscape tutorials on here. You can also become a premium member, and I have tons of free software help articles, so definitely check those out. You can enroll in my GIMP 2.10 masterclass from beginner to pro photo editing on Udemy, and I will be uploading what's new in GIMP 2.10.22 to my, that's a lot of twos, to my GIMP masterclass. You can also find me on Skillshare at gimpschool.com, and as I mentioned, you can get more with a premium membership to Davies Media Design, and I will update all the links in the description after the live stream. So I'm going to be using this free photo, which is a ballerina, so she's wearing a tutu. I thought this was appropriate for GIMP 2.10.22, which I'm calling the tutu version. So go ahead and download this for free if you want to follow along, I guess. Although I will be using this composition, which I've already made ahead of time. Alright, so switching back to the camera, and also I'm hoping the camera will last this entire live stream. We'll see. But the first thing I want to mention here that was updated in GIMP 2.10.22 is that they have improved their support for HEIF files, and that's also going to be the HEIF file. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And by the way, this is a very developer-heavy release version, so this is something that I'm not a huge expert in. It comes to more technical stuff, not as much user-facing updates. And again, I apologize, I don't do live very often, but this is going to be a lot of back-end code that was updated, so things that are going to really help out in the future, I think. At least that's what it sounds like from what I've read, but not things that we're really going to notice as end users of GIMP when we're going through and using this, apart from the general improvements if you do use some of these file formats. So yeah, the HEIF file, which I hope I'm saying that right, it's going to be the container for the high efficiency file format. This is basically like the new age JPEG, and it also uses some properties that a GIF would use. You know how you can have an animated GIF by having multiple GIFs that then play as an animation. Well, this file, this file format can do that as well. But the difference is going to be, again, this is a newer file format. It's been adopted by Apple as recently as 2017. It was created in 2015. But it also has a smaller file format, so it's going to be a smaller size while using the same quality. So that's why they are kind of trying to push towards this new file format for moving forward from now on. So they do have better support for that. So the most interesting property about this file format is that, well, as it relates to GIMP specifically, is it can actually store what's called image derivations, and this is just a fancy way of saying that it supports non-destructive image editing. So I'm not really sure if this is GIMP's way of trying to get to non-destructive editing, but I do know that this file format can support that, so it is a good sign regardless that perhaps GIMP is sort of gearing up for GIMP 3.0, trying to get to that non-destructive image editing. So relative to the HEIF file formats, GIMP is also releasing support for what's called the AVIF file format. So this is, as far as I know, another codec that goes with the HEIF file formats. And so again, it is going to be like a JPEG and a GIF combined, but at a smaller file size. So they have begun supporting AVIF file formats, And the most important quality of this file format in particular is that it does support high dynamic range. So once again, I am kind of speculating here, but I think this could be a move for GIMP to start supporting HDMR image editing or HDMR actions such as the HDMR merge, which you can currently do inside of programs like Darktable as well as Affinity Photo. So maybe this is helping GIMP be a bit more competitive in that HDR space for photographers. So the next file format that GIMP has sort of updated and improved with this version is going to be the PSP file format. So this is PaintShop Pro, which is another alternative to GIMP or another alternative to Photoshop. And so the PSP file format is essentially the equivalent to GIMP's .xcf native file format. So it's just a file format that's going to include things like layers, layer modes, and any sort of data that's going to be created by PaintShop Pro. So GIMP has basically improved support of this file format so that basically it can do a better job of opening PSP documents, much like it has made improvements to PSD file support in the past. So now it's going to do a better job of supporting PaintShop Pro documents. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I haven't checked on the audio, but that's all right. We're just going to assume everything's working, at least working well enough for you to get the general idea of what's going on here. They've also improved support for multi-layer TIFF files. So I believe I showed in one of my older tutorials exporting to a multi-layer TIFF file, and then I opened that multi-layer TIFF back up into GIMP, and a bunch of things were messed up about it. They have made some further improvements to this. The main improvement that they've made here is that they've included a feature to crop layers to image bounds. So one of the main problems they were having was that when you exported to a multi-layer TIFF, the TIFF didn't really know where the image ended versus where the layers ended. So it was just basically including all the information from the layer boundary into the image boundary and creating a new boundary. Well, this fixes that problem by just automatically chopping off the layers at the image boundary. So let me demonstrate here. I'm going to come over here inside of GIMP, and so here I have a multi-layer composition that I did ahead of time, and if I wanted to export this to a multi-layer TIFF, I just go to File, Export As, and I did this ahead of time, so I do already have this here. Let me just name this What's New in GIMP 2.10.2.2 Thumbnail 2.tiff. A lot of T's, a lot of 2's, and so we're going to export this to our folder here. I'll click Export. So the new feature here is we have Save Layers, which was introduced, I believe, in one of the new GIMP 2.10.x versions. I forget which one exactly. But now we have this option here to crop layers to image bounds. So this is what's going to crop these layers, and I'll show you what it's cropping exactly in a second. But I'll hit Export here, and now let's open that up. So go to File, Open, and choose the Thumbnail 2, and there are going to be some problems with this, which I'll go over. So I'll hit Import. I just selected all the layers from this TIFF. So these were all the layers that got exported, and then I'll hit Import. So the main problem with this right now is that it doesn't export the layer modes. So as you can see, I added some red to the model in this photo here, and it didn't really export that layer mode. So this is similar to what it should look like. It's not exact. It also didn't export the opacity information. So there still are some problems with these multi-layer TIFF files, at least on my end using Windows 10 and obviously GIMP 2.10.22. But it does now have some improved support here. The main thing, as I mentioned, is cropping the layer. So here is the actual layer, and you can see that the layer stops exactly at the image boundary here. And if I come back over to the original and click on it, you'll see the layer actually goes beyond the image boundary. So this is going to be the non-destructive form of this, where I can grab the Move tool and let me hit Control Z. There's actually a bunch of layers above this, so that's what this would look like. Obviously it doesn't look great because I applied a layer mask to this, but there is some data below there. So that is going to get cut off by this automatic cropping here, which is fine. It just allows for the original image bounds to be its original intended size, as opposed to enlarging the image boundary so that it can fit all of the layers, including the layers that go way outside the image boundary. And let me switch back over to the camera, and I'm also going to quickly see if there's any sort of comments. Holy cow, there tons of comments. Thank you guys for joining. I see I got a hello from India. I'm going to be quick because when people review this, they're going to be mad that I reviewed the comments. But if you're late and you want to view this from the beginning, go ahead and start this over. But hey guys, thanks for joining in. And don't forget, you can support the channel via the Super Chat features. You can make a contribution there via the Super Chat, and any sort of contributions will greatly help and help keep this channel continuing to make GIMP tutorials, which I know you guys like the tutorials, and I appreciate your support and your views and everything over the years. Anyway, I'm done rambling here. Let's move on. So the next feature is the EXIF improvement. So EXIF data is going to be data that when you import an image from your camera, it's basically all the information from the camera in regards to that single image. So, you know, what kind of camera you use, the lens you used, how the image should be orientated, etc. So the improvement that GIMP made in this particular version is the orientation data. So let's say you are taking a photo with your camera. I'm going to mime here for a second. And you tilt the camera like this and take a photo, and then you tilt it back like this and take a photo. Well, part of the EXIF data is that it's telling programs like GIMP that this photo has been shifted in its orientation. And so GIMP basically takes that information and it says, okay, according to this EXIF data, this image requires some sort of rotation. Do you want to rotate it? If in your particular case you actually don't want to rotate it and you decline that, then what GIMP used to do in the past was still keep that orientation data despite you telling GIMP that it didn't want the image to be rotated. Whereas now what it does is it discards that data if you tell GIMP you don't want to reorientate the image. And so this just allows GIMP, pardon me, doing it live. This just allows GIMP to basically save the image with the proper orientation data so that if you were to, let's say, open the image up in a later session or in a new photo editor, it's not going to still have that wrong orientation data that you have discarded or declined. It's now going to properly update so that the image can be properly orientated when you open it up into a new program. So really the only major user-facing improvement that was made in this version of GIMP is the fact that now you can sample merged colors inside of GEGL filters. So any GEGL filter that includes some sort of color picking tool now has the option to sample merge. So instead of just picking a color from a single layer, you can now pick a color from all the layers. And this is just sort of like more what especially new users would expect when they're using the program. It's a bit more intuitive, but let me demonstrate here how this is going to work. So here I am inside of GIMP, and let me go to colors, colorize. So here we have a GEGL filter, the colorize filter, and it has a color picker tool. So this allows you to choose the color that you want to colorize this with. In the past, right now I'm on the ballerina layer, it would only allow me to grab colors from this active layer I'm on. And if I wanted to, for example, grab the red from the text, I would have to click on that text and then grab the color picker tool and click on that. But now what's going to happen is, so I'm still on this ballerina layer. Over here inside of the tool options for this GEGL operation, you'll see that now there is the option to sample merged. So this is just going to, when checked, sample all of the layers, all of the visible layers that you see here. So now when I grab the color picker and I choose this red color, now it just directly grabs that despite it not being on that same layer. And so that's a brand new behavior here with GIMP. And I can decrease the amount of red here. We don't need to overdo it. It's already overdone, but there you can see the result of that. So I'll hit Control Z. That's just one example of that. The next sample merged option that's actually available now by default is inside of the color picker tool. So this is new in GIMP 2.10.22. And right now I have this set to sample average, which is why this is huge. If I uncheck that, now we're just doing a single pixel. But the default behavior of this is sample merged now. And let me switch back over to the camera to explain this. So the Zamarmit team mostly conducted a poll basically asking people what kind of behavior do you expect when you first open up GIMP and use the color picker tool. Do you expect sample merged, which means you can select from all the layers simultaneously? We're doing it live. Or the default behavior, which was that you only selected from the active layer. So basically, there was a resounding like 70 or 75% majority of people that wanted the sample merged behavior to be the default behavior. So that's what they've gone with now. Let me switch back over to the computer screen. Hopefully I did that. Nope. There we go. Okay, so yeah, sample merged is now checked by default inside the color picker tool, which means now when you pick a color, it's going to choose from all the layers here simultaneously and not just your active layer. If you want to turn that off, just uncheck this in the tool options for your color picker tool, and that'll go back to the original behavior there. All right, so the next major change in GIMP 2.10.22, which is more user-facing, is that I already lost it. Oh, the Foreground Select tool is now going to use the Matting 11 engine as opposed to the Matting Global. So that is not the right area. If I click on this tool group for the Foreground Select tool, now the engine by default is Matting 11. So this is actually the tool the engine I used inside of my Foreground Select tool tutorial. It's what I always recommended. So now this is the default as opposed to having to switch from Matting Global. So definitely check out that tutorial on the Foreground Select tool if you want to see how to use this. I'll also say that I was actually having problems personally with the Matting 11 option. So even though this was the main option I was using, it wasn't working properly. It was creating sort of vertical lines, vertical selection lines across the page as opposed to actually selecting the foreground object I was trying to select. So that appeared to be a bug. It seems like they fixed it, so I did test it out, and the Matting 11 engine now works. So it appears that that bug was fixed. I don't know if it got fixed on its own or if they did actively attack that bug. I did report it, but somebody else had also reported it, so they sort of merged those reports together since mine was a duplicate. But it appears it was either fixed by a developer or it got fixed automatically, so great job on fixing that one, because that is a big feature, and I was getting some comments on my channel about that being a problem. So some smaller things I'm going to go over here very quickly. They're not super small. The OpenCL option, which was an option originally inside your preferences, was designed to speed up how well GIMP's going to work on your computer. The problem with that when you checked it is that it usually broke a bunch of things, and it was usually a bunch of random things. So random features inside of GIMP would no longer work with that option checked. Certain behaviors were not the way they were supposed to be. So what they've done now is they have moved that over to an experimental section. I believe it's in the playground section, or at least something similar to that, so that it's out of the way and people can't check that and then realize that half their GIMP is broken and they don't know why. Usually it's the OpenCL option that broke it. So that is now experimental, probably until they can make that a bit more reliable. And I think a big thing, this is not a big thing for me personally because I'm not a Linux user, but it does seem pretty big for Linux users, is that third-party plugins can now be packaged as Flatpak extensions for GIMP. This makes plugins more readily available for GIMP users via FlatHub, I believe it's called, for when you want to install a new plugin in GIMP. So it's kind of like directly integrating third-party plugins into GIMP without actually having to risk or put in the time to actually directly, sorry, I'm losing my words, we're doing it live, but rather than having to directly input that code into GIMP's core code, now they have this easier Flatpak extensions feature so that people inside of Linux can quickly install these plugins. So there are 7 plugins that are now Flatpak extensions, and the big ones that I have used before and that I like in the past that are included now are going to be BIMP, which is sort of like a batch image editing plugin. GIMP, which we all know has a ton of features. Definitely download that if you don't have it already. And Resynthesizer, which is a way to sort of use heel selection areas on large areas. It just allows you, it's most similar to Photoshop's content aware fill, but it allows you to erase large areas of your image, large objects in your image, without it looking like there was ever an object there. I do have an entire tutorial dedicated to that. And just some quick final notes here. There have also been updates made to Babel and GEGL, as well as updates to the translations. And there were also several other technical updates, which I'm not really going to get into for this tutorial because I don't want it to run long. And again, I'm not a developer and I don't want your guys' heads to explode. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. That's what's new in GIMP 2.10.22. Hopefully you liked this live stream. If you did, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Again, you can use those super chat features here probably for the next couple minutes. But once this live video is over, those will probably be disabled. So definitely use that now if you'd like to support this channel. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Thank you for continuing to support this channel. You know, let's not church it up too much here. We're doing it live. But thanks for watching, guys.